And so what we do in that loss is we mourn. That's what we do. That's the next right thing, is we mourn as we're able over time. And everybody's different with this. We mourn with everything we have. We express our grief of the loss of something important to us.
Hey, Tommy.
Hey, Jeff.
Hi. This is a question that kind of like a relationship question since it's that month. I had a dear friend pass away on Monday. Was there when I was born and was there until Monday. So my whole life, spiritual mentor, every facet of my life, and like knew everybody, and died unexpectedly. My best friend basically found her in her house kneeling at her bedside, which makes me think that maybe she passed away in prayer, which would be beautiful. But it brought up the thing of like, oh, there wasn't any closure to that. This was a relationship that just ended and I had nothing to do about it. Mm-hmm. And then it made me think of like, as I'm helping plan the funeral, all these people that were part of her life, like there's these people that I'm no longer in contact with, and those relationships just kind of fizzled out. But it was still an ending that like wasn't expected. And I've also had like more recently, like some really good friendships that just kind of abruptly ceased, and not much clarity, not much closure, like a lot of questions, but it's something that I can't do anything about. And it kind of made me think of like the first step and like having to just realize that I don't have power over really anything. And so I guess the question is like, what do we do when there's people in our lives that just exit, whether it's by death or by, I'm even like, there's part of me that even in my marriage, like the chance that it doesn't make it is there. Now, I think there will be closure with that because I will obviously still be in my wife's life no matter what. But when friends that are dear to you, or, like just that whole aspect of coming to grips with not being able to find the meaning or the closure in relationships that, meant a lot to you. So.
Thank you so much, Jeff. I was speaking with somebody this week about death. And they had expressed to me that they had been given a diagnosis which was terminal, And as I was speaking to this person, before I had a chance to edit myself, I said, well, we're all born with a terminal disease. We're all terminal. And the difference between someone who's been given a terminal diagnosis and someone who hasn't yet been given a terminal diagnosis is that the possibility of them having more of a clue of when it's going to take place for them is there. The possibility, although it's never certain, as many people have been given a terminal diagnosis and made it, a lot longer than anybody had thought. But it's all simply to say that we come into form and we leave form. It is a certainty that we are going to change shape. That is the only thing. We are changing shape. Now, over the last 2 years, since this pandemic began in particular, we're now in February, so it's really 2 years, right? Since this really sort of started, almost 2 years to the day when things really started to get a little crazy here in the world, or crazier. Everybody here everyone everywhere has experienced an incredible amount of death, loss, and mourning. More in the collective than we have maybe ever felt in our lifetimes, most of our lifetimes. And so, what do we do when somebody leaves suddenly, like your friend? And my condolences, our condolences for that loss and for that changing of shape. And it is a loss in the sense of it's a loss in physical form of a human being. You can no longer locate them here in their physiology. They're not findable through your five senses. And so what we do in that loss is we mourn. That's what we do. That's the next right thing, is we mourn as we're able over time. And everybody's different with this. We mourn with everything we have. We express our grief of the loss of something important to us. In the yogic path, we are directed to grieve completely and fully for as long as it takes to feel that experience of loss. We also are asked to see beyond the idea that the loss is through all time and space. That is to say, this isn't a loss. It's only a loss in physical form, but as we see things, it is a loss, and we feel that. That person's soul and that soul's journey and the consciousness that was that person is very much continuing. There's an unfolding going on. So death is not an end. It's also not a beginning. It's just a continuation. And so as we're grieving and as we're mourning, we also want to remember that. To lose a relationship when someone is still on the planet, in some ways, can be more complex than the finality of losing somebody in physical form. In physical form, when they're gone from their body, as you said, there's nothing I can do about this. And we also mourn that reality. Wow, I can't control this. There's really, the finality of death is so affecting when you realize, like, wow, I can't seem to reach this person anymore. And I won't be able to in this lifetime again, which of course also is not true. You just won't be able to reach them in the ways that you're used to. And you'll have to go a little more deep and a little more subtle by other means to energetically connect with these beings which have moved on. But when somebody's on the planet still, and we feel a sense of loss of a relationship, I want to spend a minute on that, because as much death as there has been around people and on people's minds in these past 2 years, there have been so many more relationships lost over the last 2 years, not due to death, but due to spiritual, philosophical, psychological, energetic division. Families torn apart. Friendships ended around competing ideologies. Doesn't matter what side of the coin you're on, and it doesn't even matter exactly what ideology we're talking about, whether that's COVID, health and wellness, public health responses, vaccines, racial equality, racial injustice. Pick anything, because it's been up in the last 2 years. Pick your topic. It's been there and there's been a divide. And so we have lost relationships in the last 2 years in leaps and bounds above what, for most of us, has taken place before. So when we've lost a relationship, we first have to ask ourselves, really? Did I? Did I lose a relationship? Or did I lose a feeling of togetherness and love that was there between me and another person, which now has shifted into misunderstanding, resentment, anger, separation? What's been lost here exactly? Because the person is here on the planet. Now I think about my own version of this, and for sure there are people that right now I used to have a stronger relationship with. And what I'm really focused on right now about that is I have loved these people. And we may not see eye to eye, but I have decided that I'm still going to love these people. And that whatever my side of the street is in these divisive pairings, if you will, I'm going to learn from it and I'm going to figure it out. Because it's very important for me to remain in love, even in the challenge of interpersonal relationships, whether that's with children or parents, romantic, friendships, business, all of it. Since I'm not any longer in the game of blaming, and I'm working at not being in the game of complaining, I'm only left with one door. Only one door is left, and the door is me. I have to face myself. Which means, in order to love, I have to understand. And I have to come to an acceptance which is as intense as the acceptance of somebody dying. That there are people in the world, and I know this is going to be a stretch for you all, there are people in the world that don't see eye to eye with me. Can you imagine that? I know, it's shocking. It's absolutely shocking. Imagine how I feel. Imagine my shock about this, you know? And some of those people happen to be in my family, you know? So I can sit here and I can say, well, those poor deluded people. Wow. You know, God, I wish, you know, well, they'll wake up someday, you know? Or I can recognize, and this is very important. I'm going to use all the scientific terms here. I don't know shit about what it is to be in somebody else's shoes. I can't understand fully because I'm not in their shoes. Their opinion is right from where they're thinking from. I have the ability to engage and agree where it makes sense. I have the ability to respectfully disengage. And I can use the 3 famous words. Not my preference. It's not judgmental. It's not condemning. It's not canceling a human being. It's just not my preference to engage in the world in that way. It doesn't mean I'm right, but it absolutely means I'm right for me. This is where we get into tremendous conflict because, and I'm not trying to make this simple, it's not simple. This is gonna bring up 1,000 more questions in our group and in our thinking, because, you know, just you could take, oh gosh, you know, I guess I could put it to you like this. When the bubonic plague was spreading through Europe and people were developing the most horrendous black sores and dying in this horrendous, awful, horrific way. And people who were near those people were catching what they had and were also dying in this unbelievably awful way. You didn't have people saying then, wow, the only thing that was going on were people were trying not to die. There was no question about the horror of it. And there's a group of people in the world that feel that way about COVID-19, that see it in that same way. And there is another group of people in the world that see it a different way, that don't see it that way. These two groups are not going to understand each other. But this is where we get into complexity when we're talking about allowing someone else their opinion. Because if you really thought that allowing someone else their opinion was going to be life-threatening to you, that's going to bring up a big question about allowing someone to have their own opinion. Of course, COVID-19 is not the bubonic plague. This is a different situation. And I'm making an analogy for the purposes of us exploring this question. But the idea is that I don't know what it is to be in someone else's shoes. There are people who talk to me and they always want to know, what's your position? What's your position? And I try to tell them, I do my best not to have a position. I can't be useful to anybody if I have a position. And so I see that people are struggling. I see that people are angry, upset, fearful, terrified. I see that one group threatens the other, and I understand that this group threatens the other. Everybody seems to be threatening everybody. And so what is the truth? Capital T, truth, the absolute truth. Is there a truth to all this in relative down here in the world? I believe there probably is a truth, ultimately. I believe the only way we can get to that truth is to develop a pristine and clear mind. And the only way I know how to do that is to sit on my butt and be quiet and draw my attention inside and start to watch the nonsense that my mind can bring up and let it go. Thought after thought after thought until this quiet and this calm takes place in me, where I recognize that there is a space beyond this division, that nobody's actually right. And when you get out into that, Rumi spoke about it, there's a field, out beyond right doing and wrong doing, there's a field. I'll meet you there. And so this is the field that I want to spend my life in. It puts me at odds with people who are offended at what appears to be a disinterest or a lack of passion about what's going on. People want you to get riled up, and I'm trying to point out that the more riled up you become, the less clear you're thinking. How do we deal with relationships that we've lost? They also have just changed shape. That's all. They may change shape again. I have lost friendships that came back a year or 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 later and were stronger or were exactly what they were, love. And it just required that two people go their own separate ways for a while until things became clear. And sometimes those two people, whether that's romantic or friendship or whatever it is, are drawn back together again. And no matter what, we know in the back of our mind, we're still going to have to deal with the first part of your question. We're going to lose them anyway in this form. And guess what? Go to the mirror and see what you see, because it's going. Bye. See you later. It's going. And we should face this now and be really good at it. And get the most that we can out of being authentically ourselves on a path of discovery and recovery in this life. And make every interaction worth it. Do everything we can to wake up now, not then. And make this a great life and serve other people. Everybody here is serving somebody. Everybody here is serving something. Everybody here bows to something. These are good questions. What do you bow to? What do you bow to in your life? You put your head beneath your heart. You let your heart rule. What do you bow to? What are you serving? What's important to you? If you want to understand how to be happy, serve what's truly important to your heart. You're going to be happy, fulfilled. It's not a complex idea. As these relationships come and go in your life, recognize you have no control over another person, but you have the ability, you have free choice for yourself. If you find, as I have found at times in my life, that you have been selfish, misunderstood somebody, been unkind, or uncompassionate, pick up the phone today and call the person and say, I just realized I have been unkind to you, uncompassionate. You're important to me. I wish we could be friends. Is there anything I can do to help this along? I know we don't see eye to eye on everything, but do we have to? There's love between us. We don't even have to spend that much time together. We don't have to do anything, but just that each of us knows that there's love between us. You could blow somebody's mind right here and right now. There aren't too many people, unless they're absolutely bitter, angry, and something's unhealed within them. You know, if you call somebody and say, I just realized that I've been an asshole, they're not going to hang up on you. They're going to want to know what's going on here. And they're going to feel the same love that you feel that you've lost, or that's transformed itself into some other kind of relationship, or it's a lost relationship altogether. They're going to want to love you. They're going to love. Finally, there absolutely are people that I am choosing not to be or have in my life. And I'm choosing not to be in theirs consciously. And there's reasons for that. And that's okay. I can even love them from a distance. Wish them well, truly, truly, truly. Not any hint of whatever the thing is. But in order to be in that state, you have to resolve your violence. You have to resolve your resentment. And that's the work that we get to do here, is to work on these resentments and resolve our resentments. And then we can be in a state of equanimity, that even if we choose not to have somebody in our life because they're not your preference, it doesn't mean you make them wrong. It doesn't mean you cancel them. It's just, we have limited scope here, limited time, limited energy in these bodies. And so we get to choose. The beautiful thing about freedom is you choose where you want to put your energy. And I guess one of the most beautiful things about the path of yoga and the path, hopefully, of Recovery 2.0 is that we're learning to choose more wisely. That's why we come together every Thursday, to hear each other and to consider these questions that come up. With regards to your wife, I'm bringing it up because you mentioned it. This is not a small matter. And these relationships are bigger than even we can imagine. And I can't pretend to know what's going on for you and for your partner. But I know for sure that it is worth figuring out if it's possible to get in to this relationship together again and 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 again until it becomes very clear that you need to get out. And if that becomes clear to you, one of you or both of you, I strongly recommend conscious uncoupling. I grew up in a family with parents that took their bitterness and their sense of betrayal to the grave. Never, ever got over it. They brought on for themselves and affected those around them negatively because of those decisions, whether those were conscious or unconscious. It's painful. You don't want to carry that kind of karma through your life. And because you're in this room, I'm here to remind you that you don't have to. So how can we rekindle our intimacy with somebody? How can we rekindle a connection where we feel in love again? I've been in a marriage and a relationship for 21 years. That means if I'm awake, there have been times when it has worked and times when it has not been working, because that's the nature of long-term relationships. And in the times when it's not working, how can one be calm? Sit still. Learn everything. Watch everything. Not react. Work through it. Work through it. Have the tough conversation. Get the therapist in your corner. Get the guides in your corner. Pray every day for the best possible outcome. Guide me in my thoughts, my words, my tone, and my delivery today. Help me awaken to love. What is the loving thing? What can I learn? And if you really come at it with openness and say, okay, what if, just consider, what if this weren't up to me? What if it was impossible to leave this relationship and I had to make it work? What if there was no way out? And I had to find a way to make this work for me and for my partner. You can only do 50%, but you want to work it out so that both people are in harmony. Of course, your partner will have to do the same thing. What if there was no out? Literally. How would you proceed? This is just a mental exercise to take away the escape hatch. There's an odd mental twist I want to share with you. In the moments in my relationship over 21 years when lust has reared its head. A wandering eye may be attracted to somebody else or maybe attracted to the entire female species on the planet for a period of time. And living in the suffering of what is that? What is happening here? Okay? It looks so good and feels like, yes, I should act out. This is the natural thing. Until I really get into me separated from my wife as just me. And all of a sudden, it's a funny thing, that lust disappears. And I realize it wasn't even a sexual thing at all. It was linked to something else. It was something else altogether, like another chamber in the brain or chamber in the heart or chamber in the pelvic bowl. It was something else, okay? But it wasn't about the physical act. It was about some aspect of me that was feeling frustrated, stuck, anxious, worried, incomplete. And then, having come off of a few hours of this lustful experience mentally, and coming home and having my wife look at me and say, "Oh my God, I just so missed you today." And me absolutely melting into that love and that connection and what we share, and the value of it being so much greater than the expression of lust. Now, I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about me, and hoping that me talking about me is in some way helpful for you, meaning everybody present. So I'm not pinning this on you. You and I haven't spoken about this stuff, so I'm just saying it's a strange mental twist. It seems like sometimes, freedom, what I think freedom is, isn't actually freedom at all. Having said all that, there is an answer for you in your own heart. And there is an answer for your partner and your family. And there is a communication ongoing, a relationship ongoing. And since you share children, that will always be there in this entire life. That relationship will always be there in some form or another. And the question is can you find peace and harmony in this relationship or any other? Sometimes men and women have this idea that it would be better with somebody else. And sometimes maybe it would be. Maybe it's, we can be with the wrong person. Absolutely. It's a questioning. But sometimes it's just the dis-ease. More, better, different. Give me something more, give me something better, give me something different. And people who are in long-term relationships often come up against this feeling as we get older, and we struggle to make sense of our lives and the changes and our frustrations, and we've chosen to be with a partner, and maybe life's not going so well, and you're like, well, shit, if I was with somebody else, maybe, da 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 da, ba 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 ba. And then you get with somebody else. And then a few years down the road, you're like, oh gosh, here I am again. I thought I was on the right track. But again, there isn't one way. And I don't mean to suggest that, that one needs to stay in relationships that aren't working or get out of relationships that are working. I just think that we have to be very conscious and communicative and meditate and calm down and see what is. See what is happening here more clearly. And if you're coming from that place and you say, I need to move on from this relationship, then if I were working with you, I would say, okay. If that's what you've concluded, then let's figure out how to do that in the most conscious and aware way. And let's bring the best possible outcome to this need to separate in this way. Okay? So these are lots of things to think about. In the end, we come here for answers, and really we're coming here for more questions. You ask a question, you're going to get more questions, but hopefully they're better questions that lead you to the next question and the next question until you come to a clarity about what needs to take place. So there's no one way. And the directive is work on your mind. Calm yourself down. Start to see more clearly. Do your sadhana practice every day. Spend more and more time in silence, quiet with yourself, and contemplate the nature of this question that you've asked. The end of a relationship. The end of people's time on this planet. You have limited time too, Jeff. What will you do with this precious life? How do you want to spend your time? What's the next thing for you? Are you going to go to bed tonight sober? You give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Okay. Everything's really okay. It's just uncomfortable sometimes. And that's part of being human. Sometimes it's so uncomfortable that we want to fly out of our skin. And since we are not using drugs and alcohol, we can feel things a little bit more rawly, a little bit more intensely. And such is the way that we've chosen to live. Make sense?
Yes, that was very beautiful and juicy. And just real fast, the part about grieving, people have been like calling me and asking me like, "Oh, have you cried yet?" And like I can't. Like I haven't been able to cry, but what I was asked to write the eulogy and deliver it, and so I've just, anytime I've felt that grief or that emotion, I've just been putting pen to paper and writing it down. So instead of physical tears, I'm just pouring my heart out through my writing. So that's been very helpful. But everything you said was just really, really good. So I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jeff. I want to say quickly that there's no requirement to do or feel anything. Feelings come and feelings go. In writing, and you are such an excellent writer, you will express things that will allow people to feel more deeply. Allow yourself just to experience your own words. If tears come, wonderful. If tears don't come, wonderful. You know, we all, sometimes we feel like we have to cry to show somebody else that we felt so deeply. You just get up there and you connect with the person. Think about your time with this person and express these words about your time with this person. And what will be emotionally will be. And you stand as an example to everybody else. This is what's happening for me today. We had a tragedy in our family. I'm going to the funeral on Saturday. A young, beautiful soul in our family took her own life. And so somebody called me up and said, this is like a couple weeks later. I had a few cries as I went through some photographs and thought about this person in my life. And I cried for me, you know. And 2 weeks later, I'm not in it the same way I was. But I could hear that this person was still in it in a big way, and they will be for a long time. And so I'm recognizing their deep grief without needing to show anything, just to be present and hold space. And when I go to this funeral and tears come for me, wonderful. And if tears don't come for me, wonderful. But I will hold space and feel whatever it is and remember this person and celebrate her life and her amazing effort. And that's all we can do. So thank you so much for this very profound question, which we spent a fair amount of time on, which is never a problem for me. I love doing it. It takes what it takes, you know, to go through it. But it's obviously, the reason I say that is because I really feel like we could speak for, 24 hours straight on this very topic alone. And perhaps we'll have a death marathon sometime. I'm thinking that's going to be a hard marketing pitch to get people there. but but maybe not, 24 hours on grief. People are like, I'm not going to attend that, But I'm glad that we had this time together tonight. Thank you for your question.